Hello, and welcome to Dreamy Tales, a sanctuary where everyone can experience calm and a touch of magic before gently drifting into sleep. Tonight, we invite you on another enchanting journey, a story that helps soothe the mind and nurture a sense of peace. Before we begin, let's take a moment to prepare our bodies and minds for a comforting, restorative rest. Make yourself cozy, and with each slow inhale and long exhale, let the cares of the day gradually slip away. It's not always easy to step back from the day's demands, especially as night falls. Yet, remember, the less we worry about how quickly we'll fall asleep, the simpler it is for our minds to release any remaining tension. Allow the gentle flow of your breathing to wash away lingering concerns, and let the story ahead guide you into a state of deep relaxation. Now, settle in, and let the dreamy atmosphere softly wrap around you. Enjoy this story, and may you drift into a peaceful, restful slumber here on Dreamy Tales.
Birdsong spilled from the flowering cherry and apple branches as Auguste Moreau, straw hat shading his eyes, opened the door of his home. He stepped into the morning air, a hand thoughtfully stroking the long silver fall of his beard, his gaze sweeping across Le Jardin Éclatant, his magnificent garden. Dewdrops clung like tiny jewels to the newly unfurled petals, a constellation of pink, violet, white, and crimson. A smile touched his lips, a quiet acknowledgement of the vista's perfection, before he stooped to retrieve a small leather satchel and a folded wooden easel. Down the gravel path he ambled, his steps crunching softly, pausing before a vibrant stand of peonies. Squinting, Moreau appraised the profusion of pink blooms, the intricate density of their petals. Nearby, a honeybee hummed its low, resonant tune. The air, still carrying the night's coolness, surrendered incrementally to the sun's gentle warmth. Yes, he mused, this would be the place. Moreau unfolded the collapsible easel, planting its tripod legs firmly on the gray pathway. Kneeling, he unlatched the satchel, revealing brushes with short, precise bristles, a wooden palette awaiting its chromatic destiny, and an array of oil paint tubes. Even now, 4 decades since their invention, Moreau marveled at the sheer portability these cylinders of pigment afforded. Their convenience liberated him, allowing swift work outdoors, squeezing vivid ribbons directly onto canvas, or blending them into subtle harmonies upon his palette. Painting under the open sky, en plein air, as artists termed it, had been Moreau's devotion since his formative years. As a young man, he'd spent countless hours gazing across the beaches and bustling docks of his coastal hometown, Le Havre, in France's Normandy region. He became a student of the ocean's shifting moods, observing how its colors transmuted with the day's progression or the caprice of the weather. Consider the aquamarine and teal brilliance of waves on a sun-drenched summer afternoon, or the ominous gunmetal gray heralding an imminent storm. Recall the vast navy expanse under a twilight sky, or the profound blackness it assumed at midnight. Moreau dedicated himself to studying these ephemeral variations, striving to capture their fleeting essence in his paintings, some born right there upon the sand. He sought to render impressions, famously titling one pivotal canvas, Impression, Sunrise, back in 1872. When a Parisian critic, intending derision, later branded Moreau and his circle Impressionists, the label unexpectedly resonated. Far from taking offense, Moreau and his compatriots, luminaries like Etienne Durand, Adèle Dubois, and Léon Marchand, embraced it. They were painters of impressions, capturing the transient pulse of moments, day by fleeting day. Today, Moreau smiled again, inhaling deeply, the air calming as he surveyed his chosen spot. He remembered his first encounter with this land, the nascent vision of his personal Eden. In the early 1880s, Auguste Moreau had journeyed on a train that wound languidly through the French countryside west of Paris, past golden wheat fields furrowed by horse-drawn plows and timber-framed houses crowned with thatch. Roughly 50 miles from the capital, Moreau glanced through the window and beheld the hamlet of Rivebelle, nestled where the Epte and Seine rivers converged. Obsessed as he was with light, he watched the sun's rays shatter across the river's surface in tiny dancing ripples, reflecting upwards to cast an ethereal luminescence upon the leaves of a nearby apple tree. In that instant, a profound certainty settled within him. He had found his home. By 1883, Moreau had relocated his family to Rivebelle, renting a cottage and an adjacent plot of land, which he began methodically transforming into a tranquil botanical sanctuary. The modest cottage was extended into a long, low structure, providing ample space for his growing family and his studio. He imbued it with colors that sang to the eye, a delicate blushing rose for the exterior walls, contrasted with a vibrant verdant green for many of the shutters and window frames. Along the front facade, Moreau trained climbing roses over a pergola that spanned the building's length, while Virginia creeper wove tapestries across the pale stucco. In the height of summer, then as now, the house seemed to dissolve into the surrounding landscape, a harmonious blend where pink and green greeted the eye from every angle. Though the house formed the nucleus of Moreau family life, it was the gardens flourishing around it that truly filled the artist's soul with joy and profound peace. The land accompanying the Rivebelle cottage was initially utilitarian farmland, spare and unadorned, but Moreau craved flowers, a swirling abundance of color and texture that he could paint throughout the seasons. He planted accordingly, poppies with petals like crimson tissue rustling in spring gusts, sunflowers arching their dark-centered golden faces towards the summer's zenith, black-eyed Susans vying for the last luminous afternoons of autumn before Normandy succumbed to winter's chill. Moreau, ever the artist, often selected plants based purely on appearance and hue, prioritizing aesthetic rapture above all else. By the early 1890s, his growing success afforded him the means to purchase the Rivebelle homestead and its surrounding acreage outright. He immediately set about realizing the botanical paradise held captive in his imagination. Moreau envisioned raised beds overflowing, celebrating the untamed spirit of nature allowed its course. It stood in stark defiance of traditional French ornamental gardens, with their rigid lines and meticulous spacing. Moreau's garden would burgeon freely, a glorious excess of contrasting tones and textures. He juxtaposed humble blooms, like sweet white and yellow daisies with exotic Japanese apricot trees. Green metal trellises formed elegant arches over a gravel walkway, offering support for cherished climbing roses whose heady perfume he could already anticipate on the air. This garden became known as Le Jardin Éclatant, a magnetic draw for the artist then, and for visitors still. Moreau would lose himself for hours tending his beloved plants, and when not tending, he was painting them. Now, on this crisp spring morning, his plantings thrived, refreshed by a gentle overnight shower. No immediate tending was required. It was time to paint. Before the colors could bloom on his wooden palette, Moreau first had to prepare the canvas's ground. An even, smooth layer of light paint, typically lead white or a pale dove gray, applied across the entire surface. This was crucial for the Impressionist technique. Oil paint possesses a natural translucence, and colors applied over this luminous foundation appeared significantly brighter, more vibrant than they would on a dull, unprimed canvas. It was a hallmark of their style, paintings that seemed to radiate light from within. After applying the thin wash of lead white, Auguste turned his focus back to the peonies, scrutinizing the curl of each leaf, the subtle play of shadow within the flower's depths, the way a bloom turned its face to the sun, the woody grain of its stem. His observation was relentless. Unless pausing to cleanse a brush, his eyes returned to the flowers every few seconds. At last, ready, he dipped the tip of his first brush onto the palette. One might expect an artist of Moreau's stature and experience to command a palette overflowing with myriad pigments, yet this wasn't his way. With a mere 9 proven colors at his disposal, he possessed the mastery to mix any conceivable shade, a testament to his profound understanding. This deep knowledge of chemistry, optics, and color theory imbued his paintings with their enduring power. This morning, his gaze lingered again on the peonies in Le Jardin Éclatant. They stood regal and pink, voluptuous, their fragrance faint on the air. Moreau smiled, swirling his brush in madder red, his preferred crimson, before folding in a touch of lead white. The colors merged, swam together. He glanced up again at the living flower. A soft sigh. Not quite right, but no matter. Another look confirmed it. The real peonies held a subtle violet undertone. His eye traveled down the palette to a small pool of French ultramarine, a resonant blue. Swirl, 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 until the paint on his brush mirrored the complex blush of the blooms before him. And then the alchemy commenced. Upon the primed white canvas, Moreau drew his newly pigmented brush, its bristles whispering across the textured surface. Each stroke was concise, each movement deliberate. Repetitive dabs coalesced, slowly resolving into something recognizable, a single petal belonging to an abundant flower. The process was unhurried, almost meditative. Moreau became aware of his breath synchronizing with the gentle rhythm of his brushwork. Dab, inhale, swipe, exhale. As the moments unfurled, Moreau varied the texture of his strokes, sometimes applying thicker impasto, other times thinning the paint. The surface grew uneven, alive, compelling the viewer's eye to dance across it. Soon, scant space would remain for optical rest. Every corner would vibrate with color, brilliant chrome yellow where sunlight showered, lush emerald green in the tendrils of climbing roses, a delectable fusion of vermilion, cobalt blue, and lead white to approximate the broad-petaled clematis. Small, strategically placed areas of contrast intensified the brilliance. A hint of green nestled beside a red rose, a purple shadow cast opposite a golden sunflower. The foundation of this painting would be laid this morning, here in Le Jardin Éclatant. Moreau might refine it later in his studio, or perhaps declare it finished, one among many canvases executed with swift confidence throughout his mature years. In total, it's estimated Auguste Moreau created over 2,000 paintings, drawings, and pastels. Though the precise count remains elusive, he was known occasionally to burn or destroy works he deemed flawed. Today's effort, however, felt successful. Moreau smiled, pausing to admire his creation while dabbing his damp forehead with a cotton handkerchief. He reached down, his fingers brushing the velvety softness of a peony petal, before gently hoisting the satchel to his shoulder. For now, a respite was in order, a leisurely promenade through his expansive domain. The wooden easel remained sentinel. Moreau would return later, in the afternoon's fading light, to capture these same pink peonies under dusk's transformative glow. Plucking one of Normandy's famed apples from his satchel, he ambled down a path bisecting Le Jardin Éclatant, leading towards a small road. He took a deep breath, allowing his heartbeat to slow, then bit into the crisp red fruit. The burst of tart sweet juice filled him with simple pleasure as his gaze drifted across the road to his next destination. The view transported him back several years, to a time when he had expanded his garden vision into something even more innovative, ambitious, and deeply personal. Le Jardin Éclatant, with its meticulous planning for year-round blooms and visual delight, had initially provided years of artistic sustenance. It was his great joy, his private treasure. Yet an inner yearning persisted for more inspiration, more flowers, perhaps even another garden. Across the road, perhaps? A marshy area lay there, unused save as a watering spot for itinerant cattle. Once more, Moreau's fertile imagination ignited. He pictured, upon that sodden ground, a floating garden, a pond brimming with aquatic flora. The genesis of this idea likely stemmed from Moreau's profound admiration for Japanese culture, a fascination shared by many in Western Europe during the late 19th century. He had encountered Asian water gardens depicted in Japanese prints, which he collected almost as avidly as he gathered plants for Le Jardin Éclatant. Within years, Moreau had accumulated over 200 Japanese woodblock prints. A water garden represented the perfect synthesis of his passions: botany, culture, and inevitably art. By 1893, Moreau had acquired the coveted parcel and embarked on the demanding task of transforming it. By 1895, it already bore a strong resemblance to the celebrated sanctuary he approached today. Crossing the road, he descended towards his Japanese water garden, L'étang Miroitant. Luxuriant weeping willows trailed emerald tresses over a serene pond. Woody green bamboo flanked the water's edge. Japanese maples, alongside Asian varieties of peonies and wisteria, contributed vibrant accents of color. Here, Moreau had masterfully interwoven Asian aesthetics with the Norman landscape. Most striking were the two curved Japanese bridges Moreau commissioned, their delicate arches cresting gracefully above the water. Diverging from tradition, where such bridges are typically painted vermilion, Moreau chose a bright blue-green. This Japanese bridge would itself become a recurring motif in a series of paintings, capturing its elegant curves through every season and atmospheric veil, the fiery tapestry of autumn foliage, the ethereal mists of a chill winter morning. Though the bridge was an undeniable delight, a final element of the water garden soon claimed precedence, not only in Moreau's consciousness, but within his artistic legacy: the water lilies. Standing now at the water's verge, Moreau gazed down at the pond's surface, observing the countless green pads that carpeted it. 10, 20, 30, an impossible count. Some cradled delicate mauve blossoms. Occasionally, a small green frog perched regally upon one. These water lilies had become Moreau's singular obsession. He nurtured them devotedly, aided by a full-time gardener. To friends, he often declared that his water garden and its lilies could transport him to sheer ecstasy. It was a primary reason why now, and for the final 3 decades of his life, Moreau seldom strayed far from Rivebelle. He vastly preferred contemplating the water garden's shifting palette on a spring day, or analyzing the pond's surface after a dusting of winter snow. He grew captivated, not just by the metamorphosis of light, but by how the faintest breeze sent ripples skittering across the pond, dissolving the reflections of the water lilies into shimmering blurs of color and indistinct shapes. Moreau, his eyes ever receptive, watched now as a brisk wind transformed the pond's blue depths into a pool of cool gray. A fallen leaf momentarily obscured a glimpse of the pond floor, casting fleeting black shadows beneath it. Every season, every day, every instant held the potential for a new artistic revelation, a fresh impression demanding spontaneous capture. It is hardly surprising, then, that he would ultimately paint over 250 canvases dedicated solely to the water lilies of his L'étang miroitant. These works, known collectively as the Nymphaeas, rank among the most treasured of all Moreau's creations. When we encounter his paintings today, it can be easy to overlook their scale, their immersive power, their profound significance. Yet they bequeathed a momentous legacy to an art world unprepared for such innovation. Impressionism nudged art closer to abstraction than ever before. It revolutionized conceptions of how light, color, tone, and texture could be rendered, forging new pathways for expressing emotions and sensations within the physical medium of paint. Moreau's paintings are undeniably masterpieces, but his gardens, too, can be regarded as a magnum opus. These living, breathing compositions were, and remain, works of art that inspired creations of their own, and they continue to ignite the imaginations of artists today. At this moment, however, Moreau's thoughts dwelled far from his artistic posterity. He was utterly absorbed in the present, immersed in the gardens he had cultivated with love, and would continue to paint with enduring devotion. Even now, the sheer beauty surrounding him could still steal his breath away. As the day waned, the sun dipped behind the willows, arching over the water garden. Moreau leaned against the solid trunk of a tree he had nurtured from a sapling. He listened to the rhythmic chirping of crickets, the intermittent croak of a frog. The moon, ascending softly, would soon mute the garden's customary riot of color into subtle permutations of blue, violet, and gray. Darkness approached. He straightened, making his way back across the Japanese bridge, up the slope towards the road, and into Le Jardin Éclatant, seeking repose. Moreau paused, drawing one last deep breath, savoring the final fragrant whispers of the flowers enveloping him. An owl hooted softly in the distance as he padded up the gravel path once more, entering his house and pulling the green door closed behind him. He offered a silent good night to his beloved garden, his deepest wellspring of inspiration, secure in the knowledge he would return with the morning light. Kaido, a humble tiller of soil, coaxed life from the earth outside his village, nestled in the folds of Japan's green hills. One afternoon, the heavens wept, a sudden downpour chasing him and his fellow field hands from their labors. With mirthful cries, they sought refuge beneath the sprawling ancient arms of a colossal cedar. Safe within that dry haven, conversation sparked, and they decided the rain offered a perfect excuse for an early meal. As silver drops drummed a gentle rhythm on the dense canopy above, they shared food and drink, slipping easily into the meandering, comfortable chatter known only to longtime companions. Amidst his own quiet enjoyment, Kaido noticed a flicker of color. A small butterfly escaping the deluge alighted delicately upon his knee, its wings pulsing faintly. His hand moved instinctively to brush it away, but Elder Ren, his weathered face creased with knowing lines, stayed his movement. "The Cho," the old man murmured, his voice low. "A vessel for the human spirit, they say. When slumber claims us, our souls take flight as butterflies, weaving the very fabric of dreams across the world." A curious notion, Kaito mused. Belief didn't come readily, yet he withdrew his hand, leaving the fragile creature undisturbed. Moments later, glancing down, he saw it had already vanished back into the rain-washed air. Soon, a comforting warmth spread through Kaido, fueled by savory broth and glutinous rice. Contentment settled deep within him. Resting his head against the cedar's immense textured trunk, his thoughts began to drift, buoyed by the soft cadence of friendly voices nearby. Effortlessly, sleep claimed him. He surfaced slowly, reluctantly, from the depths of slumber. The pleasure of waking beneath a sheltering tree, the clean, sharp scent of cedar perfuming the damp air. It was a simple, profound comfort. Yet, as Kaido lay nestled against the yielding bark, a stillness registered. The familiar murmur of his friends' voices had ceased. Opening his eyes, he found himself utterly alone amongst the gnarled, serpentine roots of the great tree. No one. Only the persistent drip, drip, drip of raindrops cascading from leaf to patient leaf broke the silence. His friends must have returned to the fields, he reasoned, leaving him to his rest. But scanning the landscape revealed nothing. A thin mist, born of the rain, now coiled around the trees, obscuring the distance. With each passing second, the fog seemed to coalesce, thickening into an ethereal shroud. Kaito strained his eyes, peering into the swirling gray. From its densest heart, shapes emerged, indistinct at first, then resolving into figures approaching him. A procession, grand and numerous. As they drew nearer, the truth struck him. These were no farmers. Such opulent silks had never graced village fields. Such intricate gold pins never adorned simple peasant hair. Such ornate sandals never trod muddy paths. Recognition dawned. He stood before emissaries of royalty. Hastily, Kaito scrambled upright, bending low in a gesture of profound respect. The procession's leader, an older gentleman with eyes that held a surprising sparkle, approached and bade Kaito rise. The bow, he explained gently, was unnecessary. They were messengers, dispatched by the Empress of this realm, seeking him specifically. They required his aid in a matter of grave importance. Kaito straightened, taking in the breathtaking sight of the assembled courtiers. Each figure shimmered in robes of crimson and gold silk, whispering softly with every slight movement. Their hair, black as polished obsidian, was sculpted into elaborate, gravity-defying arrangements. An invisible cloud of fragrance enveloped them, the most exquisite perfume Kaito had ever encountered. With every inhalation, his senses swam in its complexity. Warm cinnamon, pungent cloves, exotic cardamom mingling with the sweet breath of hibiscus, lilac, and jasmine, sharpened by hints of orange and pomegranate. It was as if the very air announced their noble passage. What could such an august assembly possibly need from him? A mistake, surely, he stammered, explaining his simple station as a farmer. Yet, if they had journeyed so far, he would offer what little assistance he could. The old man's smile was warm, reassuring. There was no mistake, he insisted. Kaito was the one they sought. The Empress herself had requested his presence. They beckoned him forward. Though bewildered, Kaito found their certainty compelling, their purpose irresistible. He acquiesced, joining their ranks. They afforded him a moment's privacy to exchange his rough-spun clothes for robes of celestial blue and shimmering silver, the traditional attire, they explained, for a guest of the Empress. Donning the garments, Kaito had to admit, if this was a case of mistaken identity, the intended recipient must bear an uncanny resemblance to him. The robes fit flawlessly, as if tailored precisely for his frame. The procession turned, beginning its journey back towards the Empress, Kaito trailing in their wake, awestruck. He marveled at the silken robes he now wore. The fabric felt impossibly light, ethereal, yet it shielded him from the damp chill of the fog, far better than his thickest cotton tunic ever could. Even the sandals seemed to cradle his feet, transforming his steps into a buoyant glide, like walking on condensed air. Lost in the sensory richness of his new reality, time dissolved. Before he quite registered the passage, they stood before the gates of a magnificent palace. Guards, clad in gleaming red and gold armor, swung the massive portals open, admitting them into a world beyond his imagining. The Empress's chambers were a treasure trove, overflowing with wonders Kaido could scarcely comprehend. Tapestries woven from threads finer than moonlight adorned the walls, depicting pivotal moments from the kingdom's chronicles in vibrant detail. Every inch of the floor lay hidden beneath plush rugs, luxurious furs, or intricately patterned bamboo mats of unparalleled craftsmanship. High above, the ceiling was a constellation of delicate glass panes, promising glimpses of the heavens. Kaido pictured himself reclining on a soft rug at twilight, watching the stars ignite, one by one, through those celestial windows. The Empress herself wore robes of the purest, most luminous, cream-colored fabric Kaido had ever beheld. While his own borrowed silks caught and reflected the lantern light illuminating the chamber, hers seemed to possess an inner radiance, glowing softly. Crimson threads embroidered across the fabric formed clusters of small, round lychee fruits, rendered with such succulent realism that Kaido felt his mouth water involuntarily. Then the Empress spoke. Her voice was a mere whisper, yet it resonated with undeniable authority, carrying effortlessly through the hushed chamber, every ear strained to catch her words. She revealed they had observed Kaido for some time, noting his profound connection to the land, his exceptional skill in cultivation. He possessed precisely the qualities needed to rejuvenate a certain part of her domain, a small island blessed with fertile soil and diligent inhabitants, which had nonetheless fallen upon difficult times. The entire realm, she declared, would be indebted if Kaido would consent to serve as its governor. Overwhelmed, uncertain how else to respond, he accepted the honor with humble grace. The Empress smiled, a subtle curve of her lips that confirmed her wisdom. She had chosen well. Kaido spent the ensuing days within the palace walls, preparing for his voyage to the island province, situated like a jewel in the midst of a wide, flowing river. The sheer improbability of his fortune still stunned him, but the whirlwind of preparations left little room for contemplation. At last, the day of departure dawned. Accompanied by several learned advisors, Kaito embarked on his journey. They traversed landscapes that felt like the breadth of Japan itself, over rolling green hills, through sun-dappled fields, passing great cities humming with life and quiet villages lost in time. The final stage required crossing the vast river, a passage undertaken aboard a splendid wooden vessel whose billowing sails matched the creamy luminescence of the Empress's own robes. On the ship's deck, Kaido finally allowed his mind to quiet. Standing at the prow, he closed his eyes, feeling the gentle warmth of the sun kiss the backs of his hands. The fresh river breeze threaded through his hair, loose strands dancing lightly against his cheeks. Seabirds exchanged cries overhead, a counterpoint to the soft sigh of the current against the hull. The serene, rhythmic rocking of the ship reminded Kaido of his simple hammock back home, swaying gently in the warm summer air. Before long, the island emerged from the haze, a verdant promise on the horizon. The ship navigated smoothly towards the waiting dock. The moment Kaido stepped ashore, he felt it. The Empress had spoken truly of the soil's richness. The earth beneath his feet felt alive, springy and moist. Tall, luxuriant grasses carpeted every visible expanse, and magnificent trees soared towards the sky, offering cool respite from the sun's gaze. His advisors guided him towards the governor's estate, his designated residence and workplace. As they approached the dwelling, the advisors offered apologies, suggesting it must seem modest compared to the splendors of the Empress's palace. But Kaido, whose world had previously been confined to his family's farmhouse, could only stare in disbelief. While smaller than the royal palace, the estate was palatial by his standards, boasting numerous rooms filled with unimagined comforts, deeply cushioned chairs, plush rugs softening every footfall, and a vast bed piled high with feathers. He knew instantly that happiness awaited him here, and his intuition proved correct. Though initially daunted by the weight of his new responsibilities, over the course of his first year, Kaido immersed himself in the island's rhythms, learning the ways of its people, understanding their lives. Through collaboration and shared effort, they coaxed forth the first truly bountiful harvest the island had seen in over a decade. To commemorate this triumph, Kaido hosted a magnificent feast, ensuring every single citizen shared in the celebration. Thus, the years flowed by. 15 years he served as governor, patiently transforming the island into a flourishing haven for all its inhabitants. The once wild woodlands were gently tamed, pruned into orderly orchards yielding the sweetest plums, cherries, and pears in the entire kingdom. The fields, previously neglected, now produced more rice and grain annually than the islanders could consume in 10 years. Kaido diligently arranged for the surplus to be transported across the river, sharing the island's prosperity with the wider realm. As governor, Kaido earned the deep affection of the island's people. He mediated disputes with fairness and gentle humor. He orchestrated joyous celebrations for births, weddings, and milestones. He even found moments to return to his roots, working alongside the farmers in the fields, reconnecting with the earthbound skills that had brought him here. Then, one day, a messenger arrived from the Empress. An attendant, traveling by boat, delivered the summons. It was time for Kaido to return whence he came. The Empress, the attendant assured him, would forever remember his invaluable contributions, as would the island's grateful populace. A pang of sadness struck Kaido. This place had become a true home. That evening, however, his advisors surprised him with a farewell celebration exceeding all previous festivities. The food, the drink, the spirited dancing. It was the pinnacle of island revelry. When the last echoes of the feast faded and Kaido had bid farewell to the final lingering guests, he sought his bedchamber. Sinking into the immense feather bed, he felt the mattress envelop him in a soft, warm embrace. Consciousness began to fray, drifting towards the welcoming shores of sleep. But before succumbing entirely, he cast one last look upwards. Upon his arrival, he had requested a single modification to his chambers, the installation of small, delicate glass panes in the ceiling, allowing him to watch the stars emerge. Gazing at them now, he saw their distant, diamond-like twinkling against the velvet sky. Within moments, Kaido slept. The following morning, the Empress's attendant escorted him to the dock. The ship waited, silent upon the water, poised to carry them back to the mainland. Kaido took a final lingering look at the island as he boarded. The thriving orchards, the fertile fields, the prosperous village nestled in the distance. Then the anchor was raised, the ship ready to depart. As they pulled away from the dock, a fog began to roll across the water. It was peculiar, thick and opaque, yet strangely warm, soft like a cotton blanket against his skin. Soon the fog grew so dense, Kaido couldn't see more than an arm's length ahead. He closed his eyes against the white oblivion. When he opened them again, the boat was gone. He was back beneath the giant cedar, his friends gathered around him, their familiar faces regarding him with curiosity. He blinked, disoriented, running his hands through the cool, damp earth, still moist from the earlier rain. One of the farmers chuckled, "Enjoy your rest, Kaito?" Slowly, feeling the strangeness of the question, Kaido asked, How long was I asleep?" The farmer gave him an odd look. "Barely 10 minutes, perhaps." Then the words tumbled out of Kaido, the royal procession materializing from the mist, the Empress's luminous chamber, the island paradise, 15 years of governance, the farewell, the foggy return. The other men listened intently, their expressions shifting from amusement to puzzlement. When he finished, breathless, he asked them, what could it all mean? A low murmur of discussion arose amongst the farmers, theories offered and debated, but before they could delve too deeply, a quiet voice cut through the chatter. It was Elder Ren, the one who had spoken of the butterfly. His tone was soft, like wind sighing through tall grass. He explained that he had watched Kaido settle against the tree. At the precise instant sleep overtook him, a tiny yellow butterfly had fluttered out from Kaido's tunic, near his heart. The other men nodded. They too had seen the butterfly, though not its origin. Elder Ren continued. Kaido's butterfly, he said, had rested briefly on the cedar's bark before several ants approached it. Gently, purposefully, the ants grasped the butterfly and carried it down into a small opening at the base of the massive trunk. Minutes later, just before Kaito stirred and woke, the very same butterfly emerged from the hole and flew back into his tunic. Perhaps, the old man suggested, this explained the vivid journey Kaito had just recounted. The procession, the Empress, the island. Kaito and the others exchanged glances. It was a fantastic explanation, yet there was one way to seek confirmation. Carefully, together, they brushed away some of the loose soil near the cedar's base. There, nestled amongst the roots, they uncovered a miniature world, a thriving ant colony. One section immediately caught Kaito's eye. It was a small patch of earth, vividly green with moss. The lingering rainwater had carved a tiny channel around it, creating the perfect semblance of an island surrounded by a stream. And floating in that miniature stream was an infinitesimal boat, crafted from a sliver of twig and a curl of bark. Gently, reverently, the farmers replaced the disturbed earth, careful not to disrupt the ants' hidden kingdom further. By now, the rain had ceased entirely. After a few more hushed words, the men dispersed, returning to their waiting fields. But Kaito would carry the memory of that afternoon forever. For the remainder of his days, the thought of his time as governor of the island would bring a quiet warmth. Each day spent plowing, sowing, and reaping in his familiar fields, he would feel the sun on his back and recall the impossible softness of silk robes. Every bite of fruit would taste infinitesimally sweeter, evoking memories of harvest feasts under island stars, and every passing breeze would seem to carry the faintest, phantom scent of a wide river encircling his ephemeral home. And it need hardly be said that before Kaito finally left the shelter of the great cedar that day, he placed half of his uneaten lunch near the entrance to the ant colony, a final silent offering of gratitude to his hosts, the architects of a wondrous adventure, a dream given substance.